Sarah Martinez had always been small for her age. At 22, standing barely 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighing only 115 pounds, she looked more like a high school student than a college graduate. As she walked across the university campus on a warm May morning, her cap and gown fluttering in the gentle breeze, nobody would have guessed the incredible secret she carried. The graduation ceremony was set to begin in 2 hours, and Sarah was making her way to the staging area where all the graduates were supposed to gather. Her family had driven 12 hours from their small town in Texas to watch her receive her degree in international relations. Her mother, Maria, had tears in her eyes that morning as she helped Sarah get ready in her dorm room. "I'm so proud of you, Mija," Maria had whispered, adjusting Sarah's graduation cap. "The first person in our family to graduate from college." Sarah had smiled and hugged her mother, but inside, she felt a strange mix of emotions. College graduation was supposed to be the biggest achievement of her life so far, but it wasn't. Not even close. The real achievement, the one that had pushed her body and mind to limits she never knew existed, was something she couldn't share with anyone. Not yet. 3 years ago, during her sophomore year, Sarah had made a decision that changed everything. She had been struggling with her classes, feeling lost, and without purpose. Her grades were average, and she had no clear idea what she wanted to do with her life. That's when she saw the Navy recruiter at the Student Center. Lieutenant Commander James Patterson was nothing like what Sarah expected a Navy recruiter to be. He was calm, thoughtful, and when he spoke about serving the country, something inside Sarah awakened. She had always felt different from her classmates, stronger somehow, more determined. She just hadn't found the right place to channel that strength. "Have you ever considered the military?" Patterson had asked her during their first meeting. Sarah had laughed. "Look at me. I'm barely 5 feet tall and weigh less than most people's backpacks." Patterson had studied her for a moment. "Some of the toughest people I know are small in stature, but huge in heart. Size isn't what makes a warrior." That conversation planted a seed that grew over the following weeks. Sarah started researching military careers, reading about different branches and specialties. That's when she first learned about the Navy SEALs. For decades, it had been an all-male elite unit, but changes were coming. The military was slowly opening more combat roles to women, and whispers suggested that even the most elite special operations units might eventually follow suit. Sarah became obsessed. She read every book, watched every documentary, and studied every piece of available information about SEAL training. The more she learned, the more she knew this was what she was meant to do. The physical challenges, the mental toughness required, the mission to protect and serve at the highest level, it all called to her. But there was a problem. The official doors weren't open yet. Women still couldn't officially enter SEAL training. However, Sarah learned through her conversations with Lieutenant Commander Patterson that there were unofficial pathways. The Navy was quietly preparing for the eventual integration of women into special operations, and they were looking for exceptional candidates to participate in experimental training programs. "It won't be official," Patterson had explained during a private meeting in his office. "You would be part of a classified pilot program. If you succeed, you'd be among the first women to earn the SEAL Trident, but it might be years before that achievement is publicly recognized." Sarah didn't hesitate. "When do I start?" The process had been unlike anything she could have imagined. First came months of preliminary testing, physical, psychological, and academic assessments that pushed her to her limits. She had to maintain her college studies while secretly undergoing evaluation for one of the military's most demanding programs. The physical requirements alone were staggering. Sarah had to completely transform her body. She started training before dawn every day, running miles along the coast, swimming in the frigid Pacific Ocean, and doing endless hours of calisthenics. Her college friends thought she had become obsessed with fitness, but they had no idea she was preparing for something that would make Olympic training look easy. Her academic performance, surprisingly, improved dramatically. The discipline and focus required for her physical training spilled over into her studies. She started excelling in her international relations courses, particularly those focusing on military strategy and global security. Her professors began to notice her, recommending her for advanced seminars and research projects. But the real challenge came when she was finally accepted into the pilot program. Sarah had to take a temporary leave from college, though officially she was listed as studying abroad. Instead, she found herself at a remote training facility on the West Coast, beginning what would be the most difficult year of her life. The training was everything she had read about and more. physical torture that pushed her body beyond what she thought possible, mental challenges that broke down her identity and rebuilt it from scratch, sleep deprivation, extreme cold, carrying boats over her head for miles, swimming in conditions that would terrify most people. But the worst part wasn't the physical pain. It was the isolation. She couldn't tell her family what she was doing. Her college friends thought she had disappeared. Her instructors, while professional, made it clear that she was an experiment, a test case for something that might never become official policy. Many nights, lying in her bunk with muscles screaming and mind exhausted, Sarah wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. But every morning, she got up and continued. Something inside her refused to quit. The other trainees in her class, all male, all unaware of the true nature of her presence, initially treated her as a curiosity. Some were supportive, others skeptical, and a few were openly hostile. But as the weeks turned into months, and Sarah continued to meet every challenge, she earned their respect. Martinez doesn't quit became a common phrase among the trainees. During the infamous Hell Week, when most candidates wash out, Sarah was one of only 12 people from her original class of 47 to survive. She completed every evolution, met every standard, and never rang the bell that would signify her withdrawal from training. Her instructors were stunned. Senior Chief Petty Officer Michael Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran with 3 combat deployments, later told her that in all his years of training SEALs, he had never seen anyone her size complete some of the evolutions she mastered. "You've got something special, Martinez," he had said after she successfully completed a particularly brutal underwater exercise. "Whatever happens with this program, remember that you earned every bit of this." After graduation from the training program, a small, private ceremony with only a handful of officials present, Sarah was given a choice. She could accept a standard Navy assignment and wait for the official policies to change, potentially taking years, or she could return to college and complete her degree while remaining on inactive reserve status, ready to be called up when the program became official. Sarah chose to return to college. She wanted the normalcy, the chance to process what she had been through, and the opportunity to complete her education. But going back was harder than she expected. Everything seemed trivial compared to what she had experienced. Her classmates complained about pop quizzes while she had memories of carrying a boat on her head for 12 miles. They stressed about final exams while she had learned to remain calm while being held underwater until her lungs burned. She threw herself into her studies with the same intensity she had brought to SEAL training. She became fluent in Arabic and Mandarin, studied international terrorism and military strategy, and maintained the physical conditioning that had gotten her through the most elite training program in the world. Her professors were impressed by her dedication and knowledge, often commenting that she seemed to have insights into military operations that went beyond textbook learning. If only they knew. Now, on graduation day, Sarah was about to receive her degree summa cum laude. Her family was bursting with pride. Her professors were recommending her for prestigious graduate programs, and she had job offers from several government agencies. But the achievement she was most proud of, the one that had truly defined who she was, remained locked away, classified, unofficial. As she walked toward the staging area, Sarah reflected on how much she had changed. The uncertain sophomore who had stumbled into a recruiter's office was gone, replaced by someone who had proven herself capable of things most people couldn't imagine. She had learned that size and gender were far less important than determination and heart. The other graduates were chattering excitedly, taking selfies, and adjusting their caps and gowns. Sarah smiled and participated in the conversations, but part of her mind was always elsewhere, thinking about the brothers she had trained with, wondering if the program would ever become official, hoping that someday she would be able to wear her achievements publicly. She checked her phone and saw a text from her younger brother, Miguel. "Can't wait to see my college graduate sister. Save me some cake at the party." Sarah smiled. Miguel was only 18 and about to start his freshman year at community college. He looked up to her, always had, and Sarah hoped that someday she would be able to tell him the whole truth about what she had accomplished. The staging area was in the university's largest gymnasium, where hundreds of graduates were lining up alphabetically. Sarah found her place in the M section, between a tall young man named David Manning who was graduating with a degree in engineering, and a cheerful woman named Jennifer Moore who had studied art history. "I'm so nervous," Jennifer said, adjusting her cap for the 3rd time. "Are you nervous?" Sarah considered the question. Nervous about walking across the stage to receive a piece of paper? After everything she had been through, It seemed almost absurd. But she understood that for Jennifer, this was a huge moment. A little, Sarah replied diplomatically, but mostly excited. David leaned over. What are your plans after graduation? I've got a job lined up with an engineering firm in Denver. I'm still figuring it out, Sarah said. And that was true, in a way. She had job offers, but she was really waiting for something else. A phone call that might come any day, telling her that the program was going official, that her training had paid off, that she could finally claim the identity she had earned. As they waited, Sarah noticed the graduates around her. Some looked confident and ready to take on the world. Others seemed uncertain, maybe a little scared about what came next. A few appeared to be nursing hangovers from the previous night's celebrations. Sarah felt a kinship with all of them, but also a distance. They had shared 4 years at the same university, but their experiences had been completely different. While they were joining fraternities and sororities, Sarah was learning to navigate with a compass and map in complete darkness. While they were cramming for midterms, Sarah was learning to disarm explosives and plan military operations. The gymnasium doors opened, and a university official began organizing the procession. Sarah took her place in line, straightening her shoulders with the perfect posture that had been drilled into her during countless hours of military training. As they began to move toward the ceremony venue, Sarah thought about her family waiting in the audience. Her parents, who had sacrificed so much to give her opportunities they never had. Her grandparents, who had driven from Mexico to witness this moment. Her siblings, who saw her as proof that education could change everything. They were so proud of her college achievement, and Sarah was grateful for their support. But she also carried the weight of her hidden accomplishment, the knowledge that she had already proven herself in ways they couldn't imagine. The procession moved slowly through the campus, past buildings where Sarah had attended classes, studied late into the night, and gradually discovered her true calling. Students and families lined the walkways, taking pictures and cheering for the graduates. Sarah waved and smiled, playing her part in the ceremony, but her mind wandered to a different kind of ceremony that might happen someday. A moment when she could publicly claim the title she had earned through blood, sweat, and determination. A moment when the world would know that a small woman from Texas had proven that courage and ability had nothing to do with size or gender. For now, though, she was simply Sarah Martinez, college graduate. And that was enough. The rest would come when the time was right. She had learned patience during her training, learned to wait for the right moment, learned to trust in the process even when the outcome was uncertain. As they approached the ceremony venue, Sarah took a deep breath and prepared to celebrate this milestone with her family and classmates. The other achievements, the ones that truly defined her, would have their day. But today belonged to the college graduate, the daughter who had made her family proud, the young woman who had exceeded everyone's expectations. And tomorrow? Tomorrow she would continue preparing for whatever came next, maintaining the skills and conditioning that made her ready for anything. Because Sarah Martinez, whether anyone knew it or not, was a Navy SEAL. And Navy SEALs were always ready. The graduation ceremony was held in the university's historic outdoor amphitheater, a beautiful stone structure that had hosted thousands of commencements over the past century. Sarah's family had arrived early to get good seats, and she could see them in the crowd as the graduates filed into their designated rows. Her father, Carlos, was wearing his best suit, the same one he had worn to his own wedding 25 years earlier. He kept adjusting his tie nervously, clearly overwhelmed by the grandeur of the occasion. Sarah's mother sat beside him, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, already emotional before the ceremony had even begun. Behind them sat Sarah's grandparents, her abuela Elena wearing a bright yellow dress, and her abuelo Francisco in a carefully pressed shirt and tie. They had crossed the border from Mexico legally 40 years ago with nothing but hope and determination, working multiple jobs to build a life for their family. Seeing their granddaughter graduate from university was a dream they had carried for decades. Sarah's younger siblings, Miguel and Isabella, were fidgeting in their seats, excited but trying to behave properly for such an important occasion. Isabella, only 15, kept taking pictures with her phone, documenting every moment of what she called the most important day in family history. As Sarah took her assigned seat with the other graduates, she felt the weight of her family's expectations and pride. They had sacrificed so much to make this moment possible. Her parents had worked extra shifts, saved every penny, and encouraged her education even when they couldn't help with homework because of language barriers. But Sarah also felt the peculiar disconnection that had become familiar over the past few years. While her family saw this as her greatest achievement, she knew the truth was more complicated. The diploma she was about to receive was important, but it wasn't the accomplishment that had truly changed her. The university president, Dr. Margaret Stevens, approached the podium to begin the ceremony. She was an elegant woman in her 60s who had led the institution for over a decade. Her opening remarks focused on the graduates' potential to change the world, their responsibility to use their education for the greater good. Today marks not an ending, but a beginning, Dr. Stevens announced to the crowd of nearly 3,000 people. You leave here prepared to face challenges we cannot even imagine, equipped with knowledge, skills, and, most importantly, the confidence that comes from completing this remarkable journey. Sarah listened to the words, but her attention was divided. Part of her was present in the moment, genuinely moved by the ceremony and grateful for her family's presence. But another part of her mind was elsewhere, running through training scenarios, maintaining the mental alertness that had become second nature. She noticed details that her classmates missed. The security arrangements for the event, the sight lines from various positions, the quickest exit routes from the amphitheater. It wasn't paranoia, it was the automatic threat assessment that had been drilled into her during months of intensive training. The student speaker, class valedictorian Jennifer Walsh, took the stage to deliver the traditional student address. Jennifer had been Sarah's study partner in several international relations courses, and Sarah had always been impressed by her intelligence and articulation. "We are the generation that will inherit a complex world," Jennifer began, her voice carrying clearly across the amphitheater. Global conflicts, climate change, technological disruption, these challenges require leaders who can think critically, act decisively, and work collaboratively across all boundaries. Sarah found herself nodding along with the speech, but from a different perspective than her classmates. Jennifer was speaking theoretically about global conflicts and security challenges. Sarah had trained to address those same challenges practically, learning skills that went far beyond academic understanding. She thought about the classified briefings she had received during training, the real-world scenarios that had been used in their exercises. The threats Jennifer mentioned weren't abstract concepts to Sarah, they were operational realities she had prepared to face. As Jennifer continued her speech, talking about breaking barriers and challenging assumptions, Sarah reflected on how those words applied to her own experience. She had certainly broken barriers, though nobody in the audience knew it. The assumption that women couldn't succeed in the most elite military training had been challenged and shattered, at least in her case. "We must be willing to step into spaces where we may not be initially welcome," Jennifer was saying, "to prove through our actions that diversity of thought and experience makes us stronger." Sarah almost smiled at that. She had definitely stepped into spaces where she wasn't initially welcome. The first few weeks of SEAL training had been particularly challenging, not just physically, but socially. She was an outsider in multiple ways, a woman in a male environment, a college student among career military personnel, a small person in a world designed for much larger people. But she had proven herself through actions, exactly as Jennifer was describing. By the end of training, her size and gender had become irrelevant to her fellow trainees. They judged her by her performance, her determination, and her reliability under pressure. The ceremony continued with the presentation of various awards and recognition of distinguished alumni. Sarah's attention drifted as she scanned the crowd, automatically noting faces, behavior patterns, and potential security concerns. It was a habit now, this constant awareness of her surroundings. She spotted her family again and saw that her father was recording the entire ceremony on his phone, determined not to miss a moment. Her mother was still crying, but these were tears of joy. Sarah felt a pang of guilt about the secrets she kept from them, but she understood the necessity. Her family had enough to worry about without knowing that their daughter had voluntarily put herself through experiences that would give them nightmares. They didn't need to know about the underwater exercises where she had been pushed to the edge of drowning, the extreme cold that had left her fingers blue and numb, or the sleep deprivation that had pushed her mind to its breaking point. Better that they remember this day as the pinnacle of her achievements, the moment when their sacrifices and support had paid off in the most traditional and understandable way possible. Dr. Stevens returned to the podium to begin the actual conferring of degrees. The process would take nearly an hour as hundreds of names were called, but Sarah didn't mind. She had learned patience during her military training, learned to remain focused, and alert for extended periods regardless of how mundane the circumstances might seem. The graduates were called by school and department. Sarah would be among those receiving Bachelor of Arts degrees from the School of International Studies. As they worked through the alphabet, she listened to name after name, watching her classmates cross the stage to receive their diplomas. Some walked confidently, others seemed nervous or excited. A few stumbled slightly on the steps, drawing gentle laughter from the crowd. Sarah observed their different approaches and reactions, filing away information about human behavior under stress, another habit from her training. David Manning, her line partner from the staging area, had his name called. He walked across the stage with a big grin, shook hands with Dr. Stevens, and posed for the official photographer. Sarah could see his family cheering enthusiastically from the audience. Jennifer Moore was next, practically skipping across the stage in her excitement. She had mentioned earlier that she was the first person in her family to graduate from college, a distinction she shared with Sarah. Then came the moment Sarah had been waiting for. Sarah Elena Martinez, Bachelor of Arts in International Relations, summa cum laude. Sarah rose from her seat and walked toward the stage with measured steps. Her posture was perfect, her movements controlled and confident. Years of military bearing had given her a presence that was notable even among the other graduates. As she climbed the steps to the stage, Sarah could hear her family cheering loudly. Her father was shouting, "ESA, ESME Hija. That's my daughter," in his excitement. Her mother's tears had turned to joyful sobbing, and her siblings were whistling and applauding. Dr. Stevens smiled warmly as Sarah approached. "Congratulations, Miss Martinez. We're very proud of your achievements here." "Thank you, Dr. Stevens. It's been an honor to study at this university." As they shook hands, Sarah noticed something interesting. Dr. Stevens held her grip a moment longer than necessary, studying Sarah's face with what seemed like recognition or curiosity. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Sarah's training had taught her to notice such details. "Good luck in your future endeavors," Dr. Stevens said, and there was something in her tone that suggested she might know more than she was letting on. Sarah accepted her diploma, posed for the photographer, and walked to the other side of the stage. As she did, she caught sight of someone in the audience who made her heart skip a beat. Lieutenant Commander Patterson was there, dressed in civilian clothes, but unmistakable to Sarah. He gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. His presence could only mean one thing. Something was happening with the program. Sarah maintained her composure as she returned to her seat, but her mind was racing. Patterson wouldn't be here unless there was news, probably important news. The ceremony continued, but Sarah's attention was now completely focused on Patterson. He was seated near the back of the amphitheater, blending in with the other families and guests. To anyone else, he would appear to be just another proud relative attending a graduation. But Sarah knew better. Patterson never did anything without purpose, and his presence here was definitely purposeful. She tried to catch his eye again, but he was being deliberately subtle, not wanting to draw attention to himself or to her. The remaining graduates received their diplomas, and, finally, Dr. Stevens returned to the podium for closing remarks. "Congratulations to the graduating class," she announced. "You are now alumni of this great institution, and we look forward to hearing about your future accomplishments." The traditional cap toss followed, and hundreds of graduation caps flew into the air amid cheers and applause. Sarah tossed her cap along with everyone else, but her eyes remained on Patterson. He was already moving toward the exits, and she knew he would be waiting somewhere nearby. As the ceremony officially ended, families began streaming down from the stands to find their graduates. Sarah was quickly surrounded by her emotional relatives, all talking at once and wanting pictures with the newest college graduate in the family. "I'm so proud of you, Mija," her father said, embracing her tightly. "Your mother and I knew you were special from the time you were little, but this is beyond our dreams." Her grandmother Elena took her hands and spoke in rapid Spanish, blessing her and expressing her joy that the family's sacrifices had led to this moment. Her grandfather Francisco, a man of few words, simply hugged her and said, "You did good, Nieta. You did real good." Miguel and Isabella were bouncing with excitement, taking pictures and asking when they could have a party to celebrate. Isabella was already making plans to post everything on social media, wanting to share the family's pride with the world. Sarah participated in the celebration, hugging her relatives and posing for countless pictures. But part of her mind was still focused on finding Patterson. She needed to know what his presence meant, what news he might have about her future. Should we go get some lunch? Her mother suggested. We made reservations at that nice restaurant downtown. That sounds wonderful, Sarah replied. But could you give me just a few minutes? I want to say goodbye to some of my professors and classmates before we leave campus. Her family agreed, and Sarah promised to meet them at the car in 20 minutes. As they headed toward the parking area, Sarah began looking for Patterson. She spotted him near the edge of campus, standing by a black sedan and talking quietly on his phone. Sarah approached carefully, making sure no one from her family was watching. Patterson saw her coming and ended his call. Congratulations, Martinez, he said quietly. That was quite an accomplishment up there. Thank you, sir. But I'm guessing you didn't drive 12 hours just to see me get a diploma. Patterson smiled. You always were perceptive. You're right. I have news about the program. Sarah's heart rate increased, but she kept her expression neutral. What kind of news? The kind that might change your life. Again, Patterson looked around to make sure no one was listening. The pilot program has been deemed successful. The decision has been made to officially integrate women into SEAL training, and they want the participants from the pilot program to be the first official female candidates. Sarah felt a rush of emotions, excitement, validation, anticipation, and also a touch of fear. This was what she had been waiting for, but it also meant leaving behind the normal life she had built over the past 2 years. When? She asked. Soon. Probably within the next few months. There will be an official announcement, congressional hearings, media coverage. It's going to be a big deal. Patterson paused. Are you ready for that level of attention? Sarah thought about her family, waiting for her by the car, so proud of their college graduate. She thought about the quiet life she had built, the anonymity she had enjoyed. All of that would change if she stepped forward as one of the first women to officially pursue SEAL training. But she also thought about the months of training, the physical and mental challenges she had overcome, the sense of purpose she had found. She thought about the other women who might follow in her footsteps if she helped open this door. Yes, sir, she said without hesitation. I'm ready. Patterson nodded approvingly. I thought you would be. We'll be in touch soon with specific details. Until then, enjoy your graduation celebration. You've earned it. As Patterson drove away, Sarah stood alone for a moment, processing what had just happened. Her life was about to change dramatically. The secret identity she had carried for years was about to become public. She would be part of history, one of the first women to officially earn the SEAL Trident. But first, she had a family celebration to attend. She walked back toward the parking area, where her loved ones were waiting to honor her college achievement. They had no idea that the biggest chapter of her story was just beginning to unfold. The graduation celebration lunch was everything Sarah's family had hoped it would be. They had chosen Casa Marina, the finest restaurant in the university town, a place that represented the culmination of years of saving and sacrifice. The white tablecloths, crystal glasses, and attentive service made everyone feel special, as if they were truly celebrating something extraordinary. Carlos Martinez had insisted on ordering champagne, despite the expense. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment, he declared, raising his glass. To my daughter, who has made us the proudest family in Texas. Sarah smiled and played her part perfectly, accepting congratulations and answering questions about her future plans. But her mind kept drifting to her conversation with Patterson. The knowledge that her real journey was about to begin made the celebration feel both precious and bittersweet. Her grandmother Elena had brought a small wrapped gift, something she had been saving for this exact moment. Inside the carefully folded tissue paper was a delicate silver cross necklace that had belonged to Elena's own mother. She would have been so proud to see this day, Elena said in Spanish, her eyes filling with tears. 4 generations of women, and you are the first to go to university. You carry all our hopes with you, Mija. Sarah accepted the necklace with genuine emotion. Whatever happened next in her life, whatever challenges awaited her, she would always remember this moment and the love that surrounded her. After lunch, the family decided to take a tour of the campus so they could see where Sarah had spent the past 4 years. She led them through the academic buildings, showing them lecture halls where she had discovered her passion for international relations, the library where she had spent countless hours studying, and the dormitory where she had lived during her freshman year. What she didn't show them were the places that had really shaped her college experience. The remote training facility where she had pushed her body to its limits, the classified briefing rooms where she had learned about real-world threats, the obstacle courses where she had proven that size and gender were irrelevant when measured against determination. Isabella was particularly excited about seeing the campus. as she was already planning to apply for admission in a few years. I want to study here too, she announced. I want to be just like Sarah. Miguel, meanwhile, was more interested in the athletic facilities. Did you play any sports, Sarah? He asked as they passed the gymnasium. Sarah almost laughed at the question. If only he knew about the sports she had participated in. Underwater demolition exercises, long-distance ocean swims in freezing water, combat training that would make professional athletes weep. I stayed pretty busy with my studies, she replied diplomatically. But I did try to stay in shape. As they were walking past the student center, Sarah noticed a commotion ahead. A group of graduates was taking pictures near the fountain, and their celebration seemed to be getting louder and more boisterous. Several of them appeared to have been drinking, despite the early afternoon hour. One graduate in particular, a large young man named Brad Hutchinson, was being especially obnoxious. Sarah recognized him from campus. He was known for his arrogant attitude and his tendency to intimidate smaller students. He came from a wealthy family and had coasted through college on his parents' money and influence. Brad was currently holding court with a group of his friends, talking loudly about his post-graduation plans. My dad's already got me set up with a job at his investment firm, he was bragging. Starting salary is more than most people make in 5 years. That's the difference between real achievers and everyone else. Sarah tried to steer her family away from the group, but Isabella was fascinated by the fountain and wanted to get a closer look. As they approached, Brad's voice grew even louder and more obnoxious. Look at all these average people celebrating their little achievements, he said, gesturing broadly at the other families in the area. Most of them will be working minimum wage jobs within a year. They don't understand what real success looks like. Sarah's jaw tightened. She had dealt with people like Brad throughout her college career, but today his comments struck her as particularly offensive. Here were families like hers, people who had sacrificed everything to give their children opportunities, and this privileged brat was mocking their accomplishments. Her father had noticed Brad's behavior too. Some people don't know how to win with grace, Carlos muttered under his breath. Sarah was about to agree when she heard Brad's voice rise even higher. Hey, look at this, he called out to his friends, pointing directly at Sarah's family. Perfect example of what I'm talking about. Bunch of people who think a state school diploma is some kind of big deal. Sarah felt her temper flare, but she forced herself to remain calm. Her military training had taught her discipline and emotional control. She wouldn't let someone like Brad provoke her into a confrontation, especially not in front of her family. But Isabella, who was only 15 and had no such training in restraint, was not willing to let the insult pass. What did you say about my family? She demanded, stepping toward Brad with teenage indignation. Isabella, don't, Sarah said quietly, but her sister was already committed to defending the family honor. I said your family is celebrating mediocrity, Brad replied with a sneer. State school graduates, probably first-generation college students, thinking they've accomplished something special. It's actually kind of cute. That was when Sarah's grandmother Elena, all 4 feet 11 inches of her, decided she had heard enough. In rapid Spanish, she began expressing her opinion of Brad's character, his parentage, and his probable future in terms that would have made a sailor blush. Brad, who clearly didn't speak Spanish, seemed to think Elena was complimenting him. See, even the old lady knows quality when she sees it, he said to his friends, completely misunderstanding the situation. Sarah's father stepped forward, his face reddening with anger. You apologize to my family right now, he said in heavily accented English. Brad laughed. Or what? You going to call immigration on me? That was the last straw for Miguel. Despite being only 18 and significantly smaller than Brad, he moved toward the bigger man with obvious intent. Sarah quickly stepped between them, her military training automatically assessing the situation and determining the best way to de-escalate. Miguel, stop, she said firmly. He's not worth it. Brad apparently found this entire situation amusing. Oh, look, little sister is going to protect everyone. What are you going to do, sweetie? Hit me with your diploma? Sarah looked at Brad for a long moment, her expression completely calm. She had faced down instructors who were trying to break her spirit, survived training scenarios that would give most people nightmares, and earned the respect of some of the toughest warriors in the world. A drunk college brat posed no threat to her whatsoever. No, she said quietly. I'm going to ask you politely to leave my family alone. We're just here celebrating my graduation, and we don't want any trouble. Brad's friends were encouraging him to back down. They could see that the situation was attracting attention, and campus security was probably on its way. But Brad was too drunk and too arrogant to listen to reason. Your graduation? he laughed. From what? Remedial English. I bet you barely graduated, probably needed all kinds of special help and affirmative action programs. Sarah felt something shift inside her. The insult to her academic performance was bad enough. She had graduated summa cum laude while simultaneously completing military training that would have broken most people. But the implication that she had received special treatment, that she hadn't earned her achievements through merit, struck directly at her core identity. Still, she maintained control. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in international relations, she said evenly. And you're drunk at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at your own graduation. Maybe you should think about what that says about your character. Brad's face darkened at being called out so directly. You little bitch, he snarled, taking a step towards Sarah. Nobody talks to me like that. That was when several things happened simultaneously. Sarah's father moved to intervene, her mother gasped in alarm, and campus security finally arrived on the scene. But Brad, who was larger and drunker than anyone had realized, stumbled as he stepped forward. Sarah saw what was going to happen before anyone else did. Brad was going to fall, and his momentum was going to carry him directly into her elderly grandmother, who had positioned herself slightly behind Sarah in an attempt to stay out of the confrontation. Without thinking, Sarah moved. Her reaction was purely instinctive, based on hundreds of hours of training in protective movements and threat assessment. She stepped to the side and slightly forward, positioning herself to intercept Brad's fall while simultaneously reaching out to guide his momentum away from her family. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion for Sarah, though it took place in just a few seconds. Brad, who outweighed her by at least 80 pounds, crashed into her with his full body weight. But instead of being knocked down, Sarah used his momentum against him, employing a technique she had learned during combat training. The result was spectacular. Brad, who had been falling forward with considerable force, suddenly found himself redirected and accelerated. He flew past Sarah and crashed directly into the fountain, sending up a massive spray of water and landing in the shallow pool with a tremendous splash. The entire area fell silent except for the sound of water dripping and Brad sputtering as he tried to orient himself in the fountain. Sarah stood exactly where she had been, not even breathing hard, while Brad's expensive graduation outfit dripped fountain water all over the decorative stonework. Campus security officers rushed over to help Brad out of the fountain, while other bystanders began pulling out their phones to record the aftermath. Brad's friends, who had been encouraging his obnoxious behavior just moments before, were now trying to distance themselves from the situation. What happened here? Asked the senior security officer, a middle-aged man named Officer Johnson, who Sarah recognized from her years on campus. Before Sarah could answer, multiple witnesses began speaking at once. Other families who had observed the confrontation were eager to explain that Brad had been the aggressor, that he had insulted Sarah's family, and appeared ready to become physical. The young lady was just defending her family, said Dr. Patricia Wilson, one of Sarah's former professors who had witnessed the entire incident. That young man was completely out of line, and when he stumbled toward them, she simply got out of the way. Officer Johnson looked at Sarah with curiosity. Is that what happened, Miss Martinez? Sarah Martinez. And, yes, sir, that's essentially correct. He appeared to be falling toward my grandmother, and I tried to make sure no one got hurt. Johnson studied the scene, Brad soaking wet, and clearly intoxicated, Sarah completely composed and dry, and a large group of witnesses all corroborating the same basic story. Mr. Hutchinson, Johnson said to Brad, you're obviously intoxicated, and multiple witnesses say you were being aggressive toward this family. I think it's time for you to go home and sleep this off. Brad tried to protest, but his words were slurred and his expensive clothes were dripping fountain water. His friends, embarrassed by the spectacle, quickly volunteered to drive him home. As the crowd began to disperse, Sarah's family gathered around her with expressions of amazement and concern. Mija, how did you do that? Her mother asked. That boy was so much bigger than you. Sarah shrugged, trying to downplay what had happened. He was drunk and off balance. When someone that drunk stumbles into you, sometimes they just keep going in whatever direction they're already heading. But her father was looking at her with a new expression, something between pride and curiosity. You moved like you knew exactly what you were doing, he said quietly. Sarah met his eyes, and for a moment she wondered if he suspected there was more to her story than she had shared. But before she could respond, Isabella broke the tension with typical teenage enthusiasm. That was so cool, she exclaimed. Did you see his face when he hit the water? I got the whole thing on video. Miguel was grinning from ear to ear. Sarah, that was amazing. Where did you learn to do that? Self-defense classes, Sarah said, which was technically true. I took them as an elective during my sophomore year. Dr. Wilson, who had been watching the aftermath with interest, approached the family. Miss Martinez, I have to say that was quite impressive. You showed remarkable composure under pressure. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. I just didn't want anyone to get hurt. Wilson nodded, but there was something in her expression that suggested she, like Dr. Stevens at the graduation ceremony, might suspect there was more to Sarah's story than met the eye. As they finally left the campus and headed home, Sarah's family couldn't stop talking about what they had witnessed. The incident had transformed their quiet college graduation celebration into something much more dramatic and memorable. I still can't believe how calm you stayed, her grandmother said in Spanish. That boy was so angry, but you never even looked scared. Sarah smiled and squeezed her grandmother's hand. I learned a long time ago that staying calm is the most important thing when someone is trying to intimidate you. But as they drove away from the campus, Sarah was thinking about more than just the incident with Brad. She was thinking about Patterson's news, about the changes coming to her life, and about how today had been just a small preview of the challenges she would face as she stepped into the public eye as one of the first women to officially pursue SEAL training. The confrontation with Brad had reminded her that not everyone would be supportive of her achievements. There would be people who questioned her abilities, who assumed she had received special treatment, who believed that women didn't belong in certain roles regardless of their qualifications. But today had also reminded her why she was suited for the challenges ahead. She had remained calm under pressure, protected her family, and handled a potentially dangerous situation without escalating the violence. These were exactly the qualities that had gotten her through SEAL training in the first place. As they headed home to continue the celebration, Sarah felt a sense of completion about this phase of her life. College was over, her secret was about to become public, and her real journey was about to begin. The small woman from Texas who had stunned everyone by sending a much larger aggressor flying into a fountain was ready to stun the world in ways no one could imagine. The drive home to Texas should have been a peaceful time for Sarah and her family to process the day's events and celebrate her graduation. Instead, it became one of the most surreal experiences of Sarah's life, as the incident at the fountain took on a life of its own in the digital age. It started with Isabella's video. During the confrontation with Brad, she had been recording on her phone, initially planning to capture her family celebrating Sarah's graduation near the campus fountain. Instead, she had captured something much more dramatic. The video was only 47 seconds long, but it told a complete story. It showed Brad's obnoxious behavior, his insulting comments towards Sarah's family, his aggressive approach towards Sarah, and then, the moment when a small woman somehow sent a much larger man flying into the fountain with what appeared to be minimal effort. I'm going to post this, Isabella announced from the back seat as they drove through the countryside. This jerk needs to be famous for being a jerk. Isabella, no, her mother said quickly. We don't need any more trouble. But Sarah, remembering Patterson's words about stepping into the public eye, made a different calculation. If her military identity was about to become public anyway, maybe it would be better to control the narrative from the beginning. Actually, Sarah said, surprising her family, maybe you should post it. But just on your social media, and don't use my name or anything identifying about our family. Isabella needed no further encouragement. Within minutes, the video was uploaded to her Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter accounts with the caption, "Drunk college bully pics on the wrong family at graduation." Wait for it. The family stopped for dinner at a roadside restaurant about 2 hours into their drive home. As they were ordering, Isabella suddenly gasped and grabbed Sarah's arm. "Sarah, you have to see this," she whispered, showing her phone screen. The video has 3,000 views already, and it's only been up for 2 hours. Sarah looked at the numbers with growing unease. 3,000 views was already more attention than she was comfortable with. And if the pattern of viral videos was any indication, this was just the beginning. By the time they finished dinner, the video had reached 10,000 views. By the time they stopped for gas, it was at 25,000. And by the time they reached home late that evening, Sarah Martinez had become an internet sensation. The video had been shared and reshared across multiple platforms, with viewers adding their own commentary and speculation. The story was simple and compelling. A small woman defending her family against a much larger aggressor, using what appeared to be incredible skill to turn his own momentum against him. Comments poured in from around the world. How did she do that? He outweighs her by like 100 pounds. That's some serious self-defense training right there. Never mess with someone's family. This guy learned that lesson the hard way. She didn't even look scared. Ice cold. I've watched this 50 times, and I still can't figure out how she made it look so easy. But it was when major media outlets began picking up the story that Sarah realized how completely her life was about to change. The first news report appeared on a local television station near the university, identifying the incident and providing basic details about what had happened. Within hours, the story had been picked up by regional news networks, then national news websites, and, finally, by international media outlets hungry for engaging content. The narrative was irresistible, a David versus Goliath story with a twist, featuring a college graduate who had defended her family with mysterious skill and complete composure. Sarah's phone began ringing constantly. Reporters, talk show producers, and internet personalities all wanted to interview the mystery graduate who had captured the world's attention. Her university's public relations office was fielding dozens of calls asking for information about her background and achievements. The family gathered in their small living room that night, staring at the television as their local news station covered the story that had started just hours earlier on their campus. A video that began as a simple graduation celebration has taken the internet by storm, the anchor was saying. The identity of the young woman has not been officially released, but sources confirm she was a summa cum laude graduate in international relations who showed extraordinary composure when confronted by an aggressive classmate. Sarah's mother turned to her with a mixture of pride and concern. Mija, everyone is talking about you. This is bigger than we thought it would be. Sarah nodded, her mind racing. She had expected Patterson to contact her about going public with her military background, but she hadn't expected to become famous for something completely unrelated first. The timing was both terrible and perfect. Terrible because she had no control over the narrative, but perfect because it established her public image as someone capable of handling pressure and protecting others. Her phone rang again, and this time the caller ID showed a number she recognized. Patterson, I need to take this, she said, stepping outside onto the front porch. Martinez, Patterson's voice was calm but urgent. I assume you've seen what's happening online. Yes, sir. My sister posted a video, and it's gotten out of hand. That's an understatement. The video has been viewed over 2 million times in the past 12 hours. Every major news network is trying to identify you, and several have connected you to the university. It's only a matter of time before your name becomes public. Sarah felt her stomach drop. How much time? Maybe 24 hours, maybe less. Which means we need to make a decision about your official status. The Navy has been planning a careful rollout of the integration announcement, but your sudden celebrity status has accelerated everything. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to process the implications. What are you recommending? We have two options. One, we can try to keep your identity secret and hope the media attention dies down, which would allow us to proceed with the original timeline. Two, we can get ahead of the story and use this attention to announce your SEAL training as part of the integration program. What would option 2 involve? A press conference within the next 48 hours. The Navy would officially announce the integration program and identify you as one of the first successful female candidates. You would become the public face of this historic change. Sarah looked through the front window at her family, still gathered around the television watching coverage of their daughter's unexpected fame. They had no idea that their lives were about to change even more dramatically. Sir, my family doesn't know about the training yet. They think I spent that year studying abroad. I understand. If we go with option 2, you'll need to tell them everything before the announcement. This is going to be a massive news story, Martinez. The first woman to complete SEAL training, revealed because she defended her family at her college graduation. The media will love it. Sarah realized Patterson was right. The story was too perfect, too compelling to ignore. It would be much better to control the revelation than to have it discovered by investigative reporters. How long do I have to decide? I need an answer by noon tomorrow. The Navy is meeting with the Secretary of Defense at 1,400 hours to finalize the approach. After ending the call, Sarah sat on the porch for a long time, watching the stars and thinking about how quickly everything was changing. This morning, she had been an anonymous college graduate looking forward to a quiet celebration with her family. Tonight, she was a viral internet sensation on the verge of becoming a national news story. She thought about the past 3 years, the grueling training, the secrets she had kept, the identity she had built in the shadows. Part of her had always known this moment would come, but she had imagined it happening on her own terms, when she felt ready. But life rarely waited for perfect timing. The video had changed everything, and now she had to decide whether to embrace the attention or try to escape it. Her phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. "Sarah, come back inside. You're on CNN now." Sarah looked through the window again and saw her family staring at the television with expressions of amazement and bewilderment. The story was indeed getting bigger by the hour, and there was no putting the genie back in the bottle. When she went back inside, the living room fell silent. Her parents, siblings, and grandparents were all looking at her with new eyes, as if seeing her for the first time. "Sarah," her father said quietly, "people are calling you a hero. They're saying you have special training, that you move like someone who knows how to fight. Is there something you haven't told us?" Sarah looked at each family member in turn. The people who had supported her, believed in her, and celebrated her achievements without ever knowing the full truth. They deserved honesty, especially now. "Yes," she said simply. "There's a lot I haven't told you. And tomorrow, I'm going to tell you everything." The room remained silent for a moment, and then her grandmother Elena spoke up in Spanish. "Whatever it is, Mija, we're proud of you. We've always known you were special." That night, Sarah lay in her childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the conversation she would have to have with her family the next morning. She would have to explain about the secret training, the classified program, the identity she had built as one of the first women to complete the most elite military training in the world. She would have to tell them that their college graduate daughter was also a Navy SEAL, and that by this time next week, the entire world would know it. But first, she had to call Patterson with her decision. And as she watched the video views climb past 3 million on Isabella's phone, Sarah Martinez realized that the choice had already been made for her. There was no going back to anonymity now. The only question was whether she would control her own story or let others tell it for her. She picked up her phone and composed a text to Patterson. Option 2. Let's make the announcement. Then, she turned off her phone, pulled the covers over her head, and tried to get some sleep before the day that would change her life forever. Sarah woke before dawn, as she had every morning for the past 3 years. Military training had rewired her internal clock, and despite the emotional exhaustion of the previous day, her body automatically pulled her from sleep at 0500 hours. She lay in her childhood bed for a few moments, listening to the familiar sounds of her family's house, and preparing herself for the most difficult conversation of her life. The video had continued to spread overnight. When she checked her sister's social media accounts, the view count had reached 8 million across all platforms. Major news networks were running the story every hour, and social media was flooded with speculation about her identity and background. #Fountain Defender was trending worldwide. Sarah got up and went for a run through her neighborhood, partly to maintain her conditioning, but mostly to clear her head before the family meeting. As she ran through the quiet streets where she had grown up, she thought about how to explain 3 years of lies, omissions, and carefully constructed cover stories. When she returned home, her family was already awake and gathered in the kitchen. The atmosphere was tense with curiosity and concern. Her parents had obviously been talking about the situation, and her siblings were unusually quiet. "We need to talk," Sarah said simply. Her father nodded and gestured toward the dining room table. The family gathered around the same table where they had celebrated birthdays, discussed report cards, and shared countless meals together. Now it would be the place where Sarah finally told them who she really was. "Before I begin," Sarah said, looking at each family member, "I want you to know that everything I'm about to tell you is classified information. For the past 3 years, I haven't been allowed to share it with anyone. The only reason I can tell you now is because it's about to become public." Her mother's face showed immediate concern. "Sarah, are you in some kind of trouble?" "No, Mama. I'm not in trouble. But my life is very different than what you think you know." Sarah took a deep breath and began with the meeting with Lieutenant Commander Patterson during her sophomore year. She explained how she had felt lost and without purpose until she discovered her true calling in military service. She described the preliminary testing, the months of preparation, and, finally, the admission to what she called a special Navy training program. Her family listened in stunned silence as Sarah explained that her year abroad had actually been spent at a classified military facility, undergoing the most demanding training program in the world. She told them about the physical challenges, the mental pressure, and the incredibly high standards that had to be met. "What kind of training?" Miguel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah looked at her younger brother, remembering how he had always looked up to her, and decided he deserved the complete truth. Navy SEAL training, she said simply. I'm one of the first women ever to complete it successfully. The silence that followed was deafening. Her grandparents didn't fully understand what she had said, but her parents and siblings clearly grasped the magnitude of her revelation. Her father was the first to speak. Navy SEALs, he said slowly. The elite soldiers we see in movies? That's what you've been doing. Not in movies, Papa. In real life. For the past 3 years, I've been a Navy SEAL, but it was part of a classified program to test whether women could succeed in that role. Isabella found her voice. Wait, so when you defended our family yesterday, that wasn't just self-defense classes? That was actual military training. Yes, what you saw yesterday was probably the least impressive thing I learned during that year. Sarah spent the next 2 hours answering questions and explaining details about her training and her current status. She told them about the physical conditioning, the underwater exercises, the weapons training, and the mental challenges that had pushed her beyond what she thought was possible. Her mother cried when Sarah described some of the more dangerous aspects of the training. Her father sat in amazed silence as she explained the academic components, language training, cultural studies, strategic planning. Her grandparents, once they understood what she was telling them, began blessing themselves and thanking God for keeping their granddaughter safe. But why didn't you tell us? Her mother asked through her tears. We could have supported you, prayed for you, been there for you. Because I wasn't allowed to, Sarah explained. The program was classified. Even the other trainees didn't know the full truth about what we were doing. I wanted to tell you so many times, but I had signed papers, taken oaths. I couldn't risk the program being exposed before it was ready. Miguel was staring at his sister with new eyes. So when people at school used to ask if you were doing anything interesting while you were abroad, and I told them you were probably just taking art classes in Italy. Sarah smiled. I was learning to disarm explosives and plan military operations. The conversation was interrupted by Sarah's phone ringing. Patterson's number appeared on the screen. I need to take this, she said, stepping into the living room. Martinez, we're moving up the timeline. The media has connected your name to the university incident, and several news outlets are actively investigating your background. We need to get ahead of this story immediately. Sarah felt her heart rate spike. How immediately? Press conference this afternoon at 1600 hours. Pentagon briefing room. Can you get to Washington by then? Sarah looked at her family, still gathered around the dining room table, processing everything she had just told them. Sir, I just finished explaining everything to my family. They're still trying to understand what this means. Bring them with you. This is going to be a major news story, and having your family present will humanize the announcement. The Navy is providing transportation. Transportation? A military aircraft will pick you up at the regional airport at 1100 hours. Pack for several days in Washington. After the announcement, you'll be doing interviews and briefings. After ending the call, Sarah returned to her family with the news that their lives were about to change even more dramatically. They want us all to go to Washington for a press conference this afternoon, she explained. The Navy is going to officially announce that women have successfully completed SEAL training, and I'm going to be identified as one of the first. Her father stood up slowly. You mean we're going to the Pentagon? Yes, Papa. You, Mama, Isabella, Miguel, Abuelo, all of us. The whole world is going to learn about this today. Isabella's eyes lit up with excitement. Are we going to be on TV? Probably, Sarah said. This is going to be big news. Her grandmother Elena, who had been quiet during most of the conversation, suddenly spoke up in Spanish. Mija, are you telling us that you're some kind of super soldier like in the movies? Sarah laughed despite the tension. Not exactly like in the movies, Abuela. But, I guess, kind of. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. The family packed hastily for the unexpected trip, while Sarah tried to prepare them for the media attention they were about to receive. She explained that they would probably be asked questions by reporters, that their lives might become public for a while, and that this announcement would be historically significant. At the airport, a military transport aircraft was waiting. The sight of the plane, with its official markings and uniformed crew, made the reality of Sarah's secret life finally sink in for her family. As they flew toward Washington, Sarah watched her relatives looking out the windows and talking quietly among themselves. She could see them trying to reconcile the daughter and sister they thought they knew with this new information about her extraordinary achievements. Sarah, her father said, moving to sit beside her, I want you to know that your mother and I are proud of you. We don't fully understand what you've accomplished yet, but we know our daughter, and we know you must have done something incredible." Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. "Thank you, Papa. I've wanted to tell you for so long." "One question," he said quietly. "Why did you do it? What made you want to put yourself through something so difficult and dangerous?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "Remember when I was little, and I used to say I wanted to protect people? I wanted to make sure bad things didn't happen to families like ours." Carlos nodded. "You always said you wanted to be strong enough to keep everyone safe. This is how I learned to do that. SEAL training taught me that I can protect people, that I can serve my country, that I can be part of something bigger than myself. And maybe now, other women will have the same opportunity." The Pentagon was unlike anything Sarah's family had ever experienced. The massive building, the security procedures, the uniformed personnel, everything emphasized the gravity of what was about to happen. In a briefing room, Sarah met with Navy officials and public relations specialists to prepare for the press conference. They explained that she would be introduced as Petty Officer First Class Sarah Martinez, the first woman to successfully complete Navy SEAL training as part of an experimental integration program. "The announcement will be historically significant," explained Admiral Rebecca Thompson, the Navy's highest-ranking female officer. "You're going to be the face of a major change in military policy. Are you ready for that responsibility?" Sarah thought about the past 3 years, the training that had transformed her from an uncertain college student into a warrior, the secrets she had carried, and the moment at her graduation when she had instinctively moved to protect her family. "Yes, ma'am," she said without hesitation. "I'm ready." The press conference was held in the Pentagon's main briefing room, with dozens of reporters and cameras present. Sarah's family sat in the front row, still looking somewhat overwhelmed by the surroundings, but beaming with pride. Admiral Thompson opened the briefing by announcing that the Navy had successfully completed a classified pilot program to assess the feasibility of integrating women into SEAL training. She explained that the program had exceeded expectations and that official integration would begin immediately. Then, she introduced Sarah. "Petty Officer First Class Sarah Martinez represents everything we hope to achieve with this program," Admiral Thompson said. "She completed every aspect of SEAL training to the same standards required of male candidates. She has proven that gender is not a barrier to excellence in the most demanding military environments." Sarah stepped to the podium wearing her dress blue uniform, the Navy SEAL trident prominently displayed on her chest. The room fell silent as reporters realized they were looking at the young woman who had become an internet sensation just 2 days earlier. 2 days ago, Sarah began. "A video went viral showing me at my college graduation. People were amazed that someone my size could handle a situation involving someone much larger. What they didn't know was that I had spent the previous year learning skills that made that incident seem routine." She explained her journey from uncertain college student to Navy SEAL, emphasizing the challenges she had overcome and the support she had received from her instructors and fellow trainees. "I didn't complete SEAL training to prove a point about women in the military," she said. "I completed it because I wanted to serve my country at the highest level possible. The fact that I happened to be the first woman to do so is significant, but what's more significant is that I won't be the last." The questions from reporters came fast and intense. They wanted to know about specific aspects of her training, her future plans, and what this meant for other women considering military service. Sarah answered each question with the same composure she had shown throughout her training and during the incident at graduation. One reporter asked, "Petty Officer Martinez, when you were defending your family at graduation, were you thinking like a Navy SEAL?" Sarah considered the question. "I was thinking like a daughter and a sister who wanted to protect her family. The fact that I had the training to do so effectively was just a bonus." As the press conference ended, Sarah looked out at her family in the front row. Her parents were crying with pride, her siblings were grinning from ear to ear, and her grandparents were blessing themselves and whispering prayers of gratitude. The small woman from Texas who had stunned the world by sending a bully flying into a fountain had just stunned them again by revealing herself as one of the most elite warriors in the world. And this was only the beginning of her story. As reporters rushed to file their stories about the first female Navy SEAL, Sarah Martinez stood at the podium, finally, free to be exactly who she had earned the right to be. The secrets were over. The real journey was just beginning.